From Rixie, this is Debuff, and I'm your host, Steve Skeels. Today, I'll be talking about The Last of Us Part 2, Indivisible on Switch, and Hellpoint. The Last of Us Part 2 is the follow-up to Naughty Dog's commercial and critical success for the PS3. It's probably one of the most anticipated games of the year, at least for Sony fans, and it's certainly one of mine. On April 2nd, it was announced that the game would be delayed to an unknown date, and the explanation given was that the launch wouldn't be the experience that players deserve due to the current global crisis. While the good news is that this delay was only for a few weeks, Sony announced on April 27th that this game is now coming out on June 19th. The bad news is the wait just got a lot more painful. Someone went and leaked a whole lot of footage and details on the game. Don't worry, I won't go into any of the details myself. Reddit user Comitatus made a post on the game subreddit stating some information about the leaks. Apparently, they go through all the cutscenes and display various dev menus within the game. This obviously confirms many plot and level details of the game, but the user also points out that this may not represent the game as a whole. That might be obvious to some, but the point is that even seeing all the leaks doesn't mean that you know the whole game. Or more importantly, you don't know what it's actually like to play through the game yourself. Rumor has it that this was done by a disgruntled ex-employee due to a payment dispute with Naughty Dog. You hate to see it, but there was an article in March by Kotaku's Jason Schreier that went over the harsh crunch periods Naughty Dog employees have had to deal with for this game. So if that's the case, I could easily see some kind of payment dispute sparking this. Unfortunately, crunch seems to be an issue at many studios, and it's become a hot topic in the industry as more game developers speak out against it. But regardless of how this happened, the leaks are out there, so be wary. Naughty Dog also made a statement that expressed disappointment in the leaks and sympathy for those who got spoiled, asking for everyone to do their best to avoid spoilers and not to spoil it for others. I'm doing my best to stay away, and I can't wait to play this game on release. The release of Indivisible on Switch comes with a bit more bad, or rather disappointing news. Indivisible is an Indiegogo-funded 2D action platformer RPG from Lab Zero Games, the creators of Skullgirls. The game advertised Metroidvania-style exploration with a turn-based combat system reminiscent of Valkyrie Profile. It pretty quickly amassed $2 million in backer funds in 2015 and finally released on October 2019, except for the Switch version, which was slated to come out later. Like many games that add the Switch as a platform later on in the development cycle, the delay wasn't unexpected. However, the bad news comes in on April 29th. 6 months after the original release, the game finally dropped on the Switch. Except, it was a shadow drop that the developers didn't even know about. Mike Zymont, one of the developers at Lab Zero, posted on his Twitter saying he only found out when he started receiving congratulations on Twitter. The port was done by a different group, so you might assume that Lab Zero was not very involved with it, and that this release was done by the publisher, 505 Games. Mike also stated that the Switch version is an early build with missing features like co-op and New Game Plus, so this isn't even the final product. And to top it all off, Indiegogo backers who have been waiting for this game have not even received their backer codes, at least at the time of this recording. I'm disappointed to see this happen, especially because there were some issues with 505 Games' last published job, the Kickstarter-backed Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Bloodstained is great, but there were some launch flubs there too. It's tough to see this happen to big crowdsourced games, as it puts a stigma on what should be a really cool idea: helping fund games that players want to see get made. However, it seems flawless success stories are few and far between. Either way, I still say check the game out, though maybe not on the Switch just yet. Last up, we've got a game I'm pretty excited about. Hellpoint, a game being touted as Dark Souls in space. While the Dark Souls comparison gets old, I love these games, so I still get interested every time I hear that. Developed by Cradle Games and published by Tiny Build, the game is expected to launch in Q2 2020. Set in the aftermath of a quantum cataclysm called the Merge, the player takes control of a 3D printed humanoid known as the Spawn. The gameplay appears very similar to Dark Souls, complete with the same combat style and familiar mechanics that take the place of bonfires, souls, Estus flasks, fog walls, you name it. While many games try to emulate that From Software style, very few come close to it. The cryptic, vague storytelling and world design that From Software games are known for appears to be present here. And from the gameplay I've seen, it looks like this could be a really good Souls-like, albeit in a vastly different setting. Think Dark Souls to Bloodborne, except in space. I think the setting and enemy design appear really interesting. They remind me of a more elegant and fantastical Dead Space. And I think that's fitting, as the developers are calling this an occult space story, a blend of sci-fi and fantasy. Additionally, the game has some unique features that set it apart from others of its kind. Attacking enemies refills your healing item, somewhat similar to Bloodborne's rally mechanic. Kotaku's Ian Walker says that this turns combat into a tightrope act of preserving your health while strategizing the best ways to maximize your healing abilities. However, the most interesting feature here is the black hole that the space station revolves around. Depending on the station's position, things like new enemies, enemy hordes, secret doors, and more will appear, slightly changing the game world as you play to keep you on your toes. This sounds really cool to me. Typically, the Souls-like game design relies on slowly learning the enemies and levels in order to make progress without taking a lot of damage. This black hole mechanic sounds like it will fly right in the face of that comfort by changing things up and throwing new surprises at you, whether good or bad. Though to what extent this feature is present remains to be seen. From what I've heard online, those who played the demo seem to encounter this feature pretty sparingly. Personally, I hope it is more of a pronounced feature throughout the game. Maybe not every time you go through an area, but hopefully it appears often enough that you'll see these changes when you get stuck at a checkpoint or if you have to backtrack through a certain section. Even if it is only occasional, it still has me really interested, and I'm looking forward to checking this game out when it releases later this year. If you're a From Software fan or into the dark sci-fi atmosphere, look up some videos or go check out their free sequel chapter on Steam, titled Hellpoint, The Thespian Feast. Debuff is hosted by me, Steve Skeels, edited and mixed by Mason Carlton. Follow us on Instagram at DebuffPod. That's Debuff, P-O-D. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.